Right. Okay. That makes sense. Oh, I was also curious about your thoughts on your thoughts on programming as teaching programming as a class, because many people are saying that we should, instead of making high school students uh, take programming classes as an elective, we should make it mandatory. What do you think? What do you think about that? Do you think that's something that we should do, or not necessarily?
Because the students who need to learn computer science are often those who will avoid it. So that situation calls for a requirement. However, in my opinion, the best solution eliminates half of the current requirements and injects computer science more fully into math and laboratory science and engineering classes. And in this way, all students would get computer science through required courses, but enrollment of pure computer science would be enhanced because students would have more room in their schedules. And I think that it would, the fundamental explanation I get for why students don't enroll in computer science is not because it's merely an elective, but because they don't have room to fit it into their schedules. So we could force them to have it in their schedules, but that would still make it the case that students would only take one semester and only do it with a minimum of enthusiasm. And I'm not happy about the idea of having students who are just there to get through the class. I
Uh-huh.
far prefer to have students who want to take the class.
Right, but almost.
So yeah,
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, that's I was just going to say it's difficult to predict the effect of a policy decision, and it's valuable to make decisions in a dynamic way that allows and expects a change in the requirements over time. I think it's hard though, because human nature tends to want a decision, make it a requirement, don't make it a requirement, and then not change that. And I wish we were able to be more flexible.
But what if you change it to almost like a core class where you have kind of similar as English, math, and the sciences? You would have English, math, science, and programming.
Right. So I think it goes back to the question of there's only so much time in the day. And so if you're going to make it a requirement, you're going to have to either diminish the number of electives down to practically zero, or you're going to have to remove some other class from being a requirement. And so which of those will work? Which of those is the best choice? I don't know. I think that there are, and I mean, I was on a computer science advisory committee for the school district for 3 years, and we struggled to come up with a good recommendation for the district, and ultimately did recommend making computer science a requirement, at which point the district promptly decided not to take the advice. So I don't know what to recommend at this point for the community, other than what I said, which is sort of like I would tend to go for. I think it's difficult though, because the best can be the enemy of the good. I don't think I can reasonably expect half the requirements to be taken away. So we kind of have muddled forward a little bit by injecting a little bit of more computer science into algebra. I think there's a program called Bootstrap, which is part of the algebra curriculum now, and I'm happy about that. And in terms of, like, again, what would I personally do? I've had discussions with the administration for years now about the possibility of like teaching a physics class that has computer science incorporated into it, because I'm credentialed personally in teaching physics as well as computer science and mathematics. So that's something that I would love to explore, but there's a limit to how much time a given individual has. I'm kind of just I can kind of do what I can do, but there's a limit to that too.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, if you I think if you think about the importance of other subjects that people consider to be quite important nowadays, like English and science, and if you think about computer science, it might be some people are saying that it could be more important than science classes, um, so that instead of having science, you still wouldn't completely eliminate science classes like chemistry or physics, but you would like do half of that or less than half and then replace it with computer science. Like that could be a possibility.
I agree that that's one option that could be explored. I think that is a difficult decision. And if you were to ask me for, I kind of have outlined kind of what I would most strongly recommend, another alternative as someone who's taught geometry before. I think that geometry is an interesting topic because it involves creating the sort of the pinnacle of geometry, which actually is often not even taught because it's so hard, is doing formal proofs about geometry.
Mhm.
And I think that if we could revamp a geometry curriculum so that it becomes very much programming in the same, it take a lot of thought to make it the same computational concepts, the same intellectual concepts that geometry teaches. So you'd still be teaching what a triangle is, you'd still be teaching side angle side theorems and this sort of thing, but you would be delivering proofs that got delivered would be code that students would write rather than
Oh,
these long formally written proofs that are the teachers hate to grade and the students hate to create.
right.
If what you're doing there as a student is you're struggling to write code effectively. So and the advantage is that a computerized version of this writing code that corresponds to a proof is something that a computer can check. The teacher doesn't have to even check it necessarily. And so the bandwidth for learning is much higher in that context. And that's actually kind of been what I've been doing in developing the logic curriculum with Stanford, is where you can create proofs that the proofs. So the structure of a proof can be independent of the content for what geometric shapes are and stuff. And so there's three concepts that then we could coordinate for how we would teach it. There's coding, there's the formal logic proof, and then there's the actual geometry content. And we could create, I envision one day creating a class that kind of combines those three things together. One of the challenges is individual passions. When I
Right.
talk to the logic experts, they bristle at the idea of coding
Right.
because a proof is a proof. I don't need code to write a proof.
Uh-huh.
And at the same time, though, they're using these computerized proof checkers. So it's not like they're just writing on paper. And a geometry teacher, I've been a geometry teacher, and there's a passion for the beauty of geometry and the connection between geometry and engineering and science, and it's sincerely present.
Uh-huh.
And so, how you could craft a class that uh, you'd have, again, there's only so much time in the day. You're
Right.
going to have to give up something,
Mhm.
right? And so that would require that's going to require looking in detail at the curriculum and making some difficult decisions about what you're going to get rid of, but also to be sufficiently informed to be able to make decisions that say, you know what, we may be throwing out the hinge theorem. That's a theorem in geometry,
Okay.
but
Right.
no one ever uses the hinge theorem in practice. And the conceptual foundation, the concepts that are taught from learning the hinge theorem would also be captured if we were to have students um, uh, write code that does this rendering activity on a computer for graphics rendering. That requires a lot of work and expertise at the detailed level. It's not something where you can just kind of wave your hand and say, oh, well, we'll replace geometry with computer science, or
Right.
we'll replace chemistry with computer science. You
Yeah.
can't do it at that level. You have to go down into some details that are beyond a lot of people, especially people in the world of education, ironically enough, because we're talking
Right.
about understanding technical material. Um, and Not a lot of people in the world of education have a lot of technical expertise.
Right.